Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well.
I don't. I. Hi everyone. Welcome to Scary Duck episode 66.
Oh my god.
We. This is your host. This is Andre, and this is
Sunny.
Sunny. We are sorry for being so weird. You guys don't understand. Sunny and I sit and talk for like 20 minutes before we actually start recording. So it's just kind of weird to be like, hi. um yeah, things you guys shall never know about. So anyway, hi for real, hi all, welcome to Scary Talk. This is episode 66. We are very excited to be here with you today. Sunny and I have some spooky stuff for you today. We think you'll enjoy it. Today we are talking reincarnation once again.
Yeah, I just realized though, 66, 666. We'll have to talk about
Oh my god, I'm no
Satan.
dude, I'm doing the sign of the cross. Don't say that.
Satan who? I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Okay, first, I need to talk about something. So, movie theaters were going to open on July 15th, Sunny. I don't know if you know this, but I love going to the movies.
Yes, we have discussed.
Okay, so movies were going to open on the 15th, and now I'm very frustrated because Miss Rona, said, honey, hold up. And apparently they're now extending that 2 more weeks. So theaters won't actually reopen until July 30th, which is just kind of my soul ouch. So there's that. I'm honestly just airing out my feelings right now. This is just a couple minutes I want to take just to vent, and now you're forced to hear it, so hear me out. So that's movie theaters. And then theme parks are also reopening way later than thought. Like apparently Disneyland was, I love theme parks too. Disney was going to reopen recently, but they pushed that, I think also around mid-July, but they pushed that back. So now God knows what's going to happen. Not that I was dying to go to theme parks as much as I was dying to go to a movie theater, because theme parks probably will be packed with people as much as they try to restrict, like, you know, all of that. Like as much as they try to like implement social distance, I feel like theme parks are probably going to be like a hub for infections. So probably not a great idea for me to go the first day they reopen. But movie theaters, they were going to like distance you well, like on like every like 2 chairs on every side of you, like 2 seats, and then like something about the rows behind and in front of you, and like no food at the counter, like all this stuff to make sure that you were safe. So that I was like pumped because I was like, oh, okay, it sounds like I can actually go and not die. So for it to just be pushed back,
That is really sad times. I'm feeling that too because I'm going to be a teacher, and all of my training and stuff has been like, don't worry, it'll probably be in person. We'll just plan for it like it's in person. And the closer we get, the more it's looking like, no, I'm going to be introducing myself to 30 high schoolers, trying to teach them algebra through Zoom. Dude, what? How is that even supposed to work? If any of my students ever listen to this podcast, just know that I'm really sorry, and I'm going to be doing my best.
Well, please do not tell them this podcast exists.
I
You will be
not.
fired on the spot. Now, listen, I can't believe you're teaching high schoolers because you yourself are 14. That's a true fact. Yeah. So, please tell us your story.
My story is that I'm 14.
You're a child prodigy.
Yes. So I graduated high school at the age of 8. And then I received my bachelor's and master's within the disappointingly normal timeline of 6 years, and which is why I'm now 14.
Now 14. Yeah, you really slowed down in college. I don't know what happened to your genius, but
no, that is not true. But it is true that I graduated high school young at 16, which is why I'm now extra
You actually
young.
did, yes. So that joke, only half a joke, TBH. You're okay. Her Majesty, she's smart. Listen. Brains galore, okay? We got brains in the house. Hi, brain alert. So
big brain, big genitalia. You know what they say.
Okay. Something else I want to talk about. This is very poignant to 0 of our listeners, but I'm still going to talk about it because it's my fucking podcast. YouTube drama. I don't know if you are like aware of this, if you are, you know, in the know. There is a lot of tea. There's some beef happening between a couple of really big creators on that platform.
I've heard a little.
YouTube.
I know it involves Jeffree Star. And
It involves Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, Tati Westbrook. It involves the scandal like that James Charles went through last year,
yeah,
where they tried to
I
like
had kept
destroy
up
his
with
life.
that one, but I haven't learned about this more recent one.
Okay, so basically, in a nutshell, what's happening now with the James Charles drama is Tati is saying that she was manipulated into making this video, and so she's apologized to Charles privately, and I guess now too publicly with this new video. But a lot of people aren't buying that that was the case, and obviously Shane and especially Shane Dawson is defending himself, saying no, this didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the point is, I'm really entertained by all of this, and this YouTube drama is keeping my sanity during quarantine. So there's that.
I love that. That's and there's just so many. This is like years now. Like you've got to have background. You have to know history to be fully up to date with
watch so much
YouTube
YouTube.
drama. It's wonderful. I love it, dude. I watched Jeffree Star's entire video on his breakup earlier this year. Like you can know, you can know. I didn't even bring up the speed. I just wanted to see him talk.
Love. I actually didn't watch that in its entirety because I thought it was kind of tiresome. But I have watched other of his long videos, and I do keep up with all the YouTube drama. Not only with this trio, quartet, whatever, but also with everything like the shenanigans of Nikita Dragon and Gabriel Zamora and Manny MUA. I don't even like makeup. I just love makeup drama. Are you kidding me? Like this community is drama galore. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they need to have their own Bravo show.
Dude, it's nuts.
The real beauty gurus of LA County.
And I totally love it. And the thing is too that I find all of them sympathetic. Maybe this is just because I haven't watched enough, but like Jeffree Star has this background of like a lot of stuff going on in his life. It sounds like same with Shane Dawson. Like it's very easy to just watch them and be like, sometimes y'all are bitches, but I kind of just enjoy watching all of you. So
yeah, it's weird because it's like I constantly feel like, oh, you're actually really nice. Wow, you actually suck. It's like it's a constant flip flop depending on what comes out.
That's so true. Yeah, because I say like, oh, I like Jeffree Star, and then I'm like, oh, but there has been some genuinely questionable stuff that has come out of that man.
Yeah. And that's on being a passive consumer, and that's me. I guess I'm just being fed what I'm being told. I meknow, listen, whatever. I just like entertainment.
Yes.
Now, also. TikTok has also kept my sanity through this quarantine.
Dude, there's some really
like,
funny TikToks.
I know. Forget the funny TikToks. Like, yes, but also I have learned to bake so many things that I am never going to bake ever in my life. And but it's awesome to just have the knowledge stored in my head. Are you kidding me?
And also the hot people. There's this one hot guy who always shows his cat in funny positions or like with funny hats on or whatever. And I love him. I would so date him. I hope that we become famous through this podcast, and I'll just give him a shout out every episode until he slides into my DMs. That's how I feel about him.
I'm just finna make us a TikTok profile
Wait.
so we can.
Can you imagine us making snippets. Like a scary dance?
Yeah, like doing a scary dance. Like we're gonna like recreate Thriller or some shit, rise up the ranks, and eventually just like get famous enough that we're at this guy's same rank, so we can send him a DM and be like, "I'm one of the co-hosts. I want to suck your dick." And then,
dude, I'm finally motivated enough. This is this is it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna send that, and then I'll be like, also my co-host Sunny likes you. So.
Shut up. Dude, top 10 podcast betrayal.
I know. Dude, top 10 anime deaths. No, listen, okay. So
now that we're 20 minutes into recording.
So now that we're 20 minutes into this, well, no, big cut. So we should be more around 15. So, okay, we need to talk reincarnation because that's today's topic, and I'm actually really interested in talking about this. Listen, I love our banter, but I need to get you spooked. I need to spook you with some of the stuff that I read because it is, no joke, actually, frankly, kind of impressive. I love reincarnation as a topic. This is why this is part 2 of this, because because I think it's real. That's why. That's it. It's really that simple.
I completely disagreed before doing any research for today's episode, and we'll see how far we go here, Andre. I'm really not a believer in the supernatural, which is why doing this has been so fun.
I mean, if I can convert you at all, that's my pleasure. So.
Also, while we're at it, I'm gonna come to your door because I'm also a Jehovah's Witness. So.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna start out with a couple of
Okay.
cases, a couple of cases of yeah, I mean alleged reincarnation. So the first one that I want to talk about is the case of Edward Austrian, and I'm gonna summarize these because I actually have plenty of them. And okay, so Patricia Austrian's 4-year-old son Edward had a phobia of drizzly gray days. Okay, so here you have a kid. He's 4 years old. His name is Ed, and he doesn't
Dude,
like cloudy
same. I
days.
was named Sunny. Maybe we have the same past life. Maybe this dude has my soul. Straight up.
Dude, maybe you died because you were thrown into the sun. Same. Okay, so apparently this kid, what happens is this kid at age 4 develops a problem with his throat and starts to complain that he has severe pain. And apparently, whenever he had a sore throat, the kid said that his quote unquote shot was hurting. And Ed would tell his mom very detailed stories about his previous life in the trenches in what was apparently World War I.
Oh, shoot.
And he told her that he had been shot in the throat and killed. Which, listen, I don't know about any 4-year-olds that you've met, but like my little cousins, they're not talking about getting shot and killed. So this kid, I'm already compelled to believe this kid.
Hmm.
Now, at first, you had doctors not being able to find a cause for a sore throat, and so what they did was they removed his tonsils as a precautionary measure. Which,
Hmm.
okay, I guess I don't know if that's a thing. But apparently after they did this, a cyst developed in his throat anyway, and doctors didn't know how to treat that. But as soon as Edward was prompted to tell his parents more about his previous life and talk about how he was killed, the cyst in his throat disappeared. And the doctors never found out why the cyst vanished. That is super
Dude.
interesting.
Dude. He was at peace. That's what the shit happened, doctors. But
Dude, I know.
that is super interesting. And a lot of these are just super interesting, especially when you find the other person or their family. But yeah, so 4-year-old talking about their throat hurting and then having a physical thing happen as a result.
Yeah, this made me think uh, about something. Well, it made me think about. Man, doctors be whack. I mean, listen, doctors, we stand, but also, I don't know. Like, I want to see the state of medicine in 100 years. Like, I
Mm,
wonder if like, how do I? I think that stress causes so many things
mm,
that we don't account for in the state of modern medicine today.
totally.
Um, and here you go. This is an example. If you believe that it was because he was compelled to talk about his reincarnation and his pain wasn't gonna away, his pain wasn't gonna go away unless he did so, then this to me compelling evidence of the fact that the stress was causing this little boy a cyst in his throat.
Mm.
Um, yeah, which
It's a good
it
point,
makes you
Our mind and our
makes you
body
think.
are connected. You can't really ignore one and pretend to take care of the other.
And we already know that stress causes so many other things and also worsens conditions. So just food for thought. Food for thought.
I'm eating it
Anyway,
up. I'm eating it up, Andre. Is it fruit?
open
Is
your
it
brain mouth
vegetables?
and
Is
eat
it Little
this.
Debbie's Cosmic Brownies? Because you know that I'll eat that up.
No, it's plain fried tofu. The next case I have is the case of Bruce Whittier. And this guy apparently had recurring dreams of being a Jewish man hiding in a house with his family. I bet you know how this one ends.
Damn.
His name, according to this guy in his past life, his name had been Stefan Horowitz. And he was a Dutch Jew who was discovered in his hiding place along with his family and then taken to Auschwitz where he died. During and after the dreams, Bruce would feel panicked and restless, and apparently at some point he started to record his dreams. And one night he dreamed about a clock, which he was able to draw in great detail upon waking up. So there's that. Apparently, Whittier dreamed about the location of the clock in a nearby antique shop and then went to look there. And it turns out the clock was visible in the shop window and looked exactly like the one in his dreams. The guy then asked the dealer where the clock had come from, and apparently the dealer told him that he had bought the clock from among the property of this retired German major in the Netherlands, and this obviously convinced Bruce that he really had led a past life as a Dutch Jew. So that's
Dang,
on tape.
that's deep though, with the clock having been bought from a German guy. Who,
I
and that is
know.
on Naughty Pasts. Ooh, that's like, okay, we both came from the same small town, and I definitely had a classmate who was like, yeah, my German grandparents lived in Argentina for a while, probably because they were escaped Nazis, but we don't talk about
Yeah,
that. Ooh.
dude. I mean, yeah, that it sucks that like it would suck being that person and knowing that and being like, God, yeah, like I have people in my family that might have straight up been Nazis, and like you're not a Nazi, but you just have to like accept that.
Yeah.
That
Well, the
sucks.
thing is, I bet that if you went back in our ancestry, every single one of us would have some shitty
Yeah,
ancestors, you know? Yeah.
dude, my dad a Nazi. Hello, no, yeah, he wasn't like in World War II or anything. He's just a Nazi, but it's traumatic.
He's a
So,
reincarnated Nazi, and that's what brings us
he's a
to today's
reincarnated Nazi.
topic.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Anyway, your turn.
Okay, I've got some really, really fun ones. The first one is Shanti Devi. I also wanted to make sure you have not covered Shanti Devi and Arthur Flowerdew. I don't think so, but yeah.
I have not. No.
Okay, so Shanti Devi was an Indian woman who claimed to remember her past life and became the subject of reincarnation research. Now, fun thing is that I've read a lot about reincarnation research at this point, and it comes up internationally and also tends to come up a lot in South Asia because their religion and culture believes in reincarnation. So I think that there's like a slightly lower chance of parents being like, just leave that behind, Jimmy. Don't talk about that right now. Or in as a more culturally accurate name, Shanti. So a commission set up by no one other than Indian political leader Mahatma Gandhi himself went to check it out. Yeah, because she was getting a lot of hype. And they actually supported her claim. They said, there's no way for us to disprove that this could be true, while other reports have disputed it. So, getting into her story, Shanti was born in Delhi, India, and as a little girl in the 1930s, she began to claim to remember details of a past life. According to these accounts, when she was about 4 years old, she told her parents that her real home was in Mathura, where her husband lived, about 145 kilometers from her own home in Delhi. Discouraged by her parents, she ran away from home at age 6 trying to reach Mathura. Back home, she stated in school that she was married and had died 10 days after having given birth to a child. Interviewed by her teacher and headmaster, she used words from the Mathura dialect and divulged the name of her merchant husband, Kedar Nath. The headmaster located a merchant who had that name in Mathura, who had lost his wife, Lugdi Devi, 9 years earlier, 10 days after having given birth to a son. Again, so all the facts completely independently matched up. Kedar Nath traveled to Delhi pretending to be his brother. Again, so he's testing her, right? He meets Shanti and tells her, oh, I'm actually Kedar Nath, like the husband of this lady's brother. But Shanti Devi immediately recognized him and Lugdi Devi's son, and she said, no, you're not his brother, you're him. And she knew several details of Kedar Nath's life with his wife. He was soon convinced that Shanti Devi was indeed her reincarnation. And that is how, the case got enough attention to be brought to Gandhi, who set up a commission to investigate. The commission traveled with Shanti Devi to Mathura, arriving on November 15, 1935, and there she recognized several family members, including the grandfather of Lugdi Devi. She found out that, this is fun, this is kind of getting to tea. So she found out that Kedar Nath had neglected to keep a number of promises he had made to Lugdi Devi on her deathbed. And this page doesn't go into it in much more detail, but she traveled home with her parents. And the commission's report concluded that she was indeed the reincarnation of Lugdi Devi, which was published in 1936. So that's a really interesting and compelling case because, again, of this official report, official committee, headed by Gandhi, who's got a decent amount of clout in our history books, I would say. And they concluded that she was a reincarnation. And you can make claims about, like, well, India is more likely to believe in reincarnation, so maybe this was just something that was like planted in her mind. But there's so many, like, the fact too that Lugdi Devi's husband was not immediately a believer, and he tested her, saying like that he was his brother. Um, a lot of independent things match up and make the case pretty compelling. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. That is really interesting. I think. Didn't you say at the beginning that the committee had said that they couldn't disprove the claim?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they prove the claim. I mean, I like
Mm.
you can't disprove the claim unicorns are real. Like you can't prove that that is wrong. You know?
That's a good point. It's actually, it depends on the source that I've looked at for this, because one said the committee decided they couldn't disprove her claim, and others have said it supported her claim. Um, I'd have to look at the like commissioned conclusion myself to really give a definitive answer, but it's very clear that the Gandhi Commission was like, at the very least, she seems to know too much for us to be able to say like, oh yeah, she's not a reincarnation. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. No, I mean I agree. I thought the language was interesting, but I actually think the case itself is very compelling for like working as evidence that reincarnation is a thing because my cases are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have these kids talking about things that they shouldn't know about. It's like the common thread that runs through all these cases is always the same, and I mean that tells you something, doesn't it? Like maybe there is something here.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's just really interesting points in different cases. I thought that this one was interesting because of all of the detail and like testing that she went through. And she continued to talk about her reincarnation throughout her life, whereas a lot of kids kind of forget it or either come to peace with it, um, which is really interesting. And basically, I have other cases talking about cross-cultural reincarnation, right? Because
mhm,
reincarnations don't always have to be like, oh, I was originally born in this city 100 miles away. Um,
mhm.
yeah, and a lot of other like research that's been done around it that's really, really interesting. But yes.
I do wonder about um, what brings the reincarnated spirit at like to peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like what it's like what finally brings it peace because they're like you literally just said like this kid kept talking about this throughout her life. You have kids. I have cases of kids though that um they'll talk about it and then they'll slowly start forgetting it
Mm-hmm.
almost as if they achieved the mission that they were supposed to do, that the
Mm-hmm.
previous spirit
Mm-hmm.
asked them to do in this new body, and then that's that, and now that the old spirit can rest in peace and leave this kid alone.
Well,
um
totally.
it's weird.
Mm.
And then you have like the one that I talked about the Dutch clock. Like this
Mm-hmm.
guy was an old he was a man. Like he this didn't happen when he was a kid, so that's odd.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's very, from what I've seen, most reincarnation stories, especially the ones that are um, confirmed in some way, like the facts seem to check out, a lot of them are violent deaths. It's like 50% of
Hmm.
reincarnations are violent deaths, even
Hmm.
though, or reincarnation testimonies stories come from violent deaths, even though obviously that's not how many people die violently. So it could be that when you have a really intense memory of your death, you're more likely to retain those memories, right? So if you like
Hmm.
died at Auschwitz, which I would imagine would be super intense, it like makes more sense that that memory would be intense enough to leave some kind of memory or scar on your next life, which was another really interesting point, is that a lot of reincarnations are accompanied by scars that match up with a cause of death, which is really interesting.
Yes,
Um,
I definitely see that in some of my cases too.
yeah.
That makes me think about like the fact that a lot of reincarnation cases happen because of violent deaths. Um, like the concept of reincarnation itself, I believe in it. There's just way too much what I would like to call evidence for me to say it's not a thing. I mean, how can it not be a thing? You see these kids talking about things that they definitely should have no knowledge of. However, it seems to me that reincarnation, like you said, doesn't happen to everyone, and it's
Mm,
almost always exclusive to some kind of really traumatic or violent death.
mm,
And it's like, then that takes me to another level of thinking, which is the logistics of reincarnation, which we are going to get
mm.
into for the next 5 minutes because I say so. So, okay. So does God like does God say like, Mama, you have to go back? Like FBI mode, you have to show them the body. Like how who gets picked and why? You know?
Yeah.
And also who's doing the picking? Is religion real? Oh my god, is God real? Oh my god, should I become religious? Oh my god.
It's actually really interesting that you bring that up because some stuff around that came up for me too. Like, I don't know, do you have more thoughts on that you wanted to share first?
Too many. Go ahead.
Well, while I was doing research, someone came up that I'll talk more about who I basically worship now, who really did his best to do scientific research on reincarnation. Like, he was originally a psychiatrist and he had done really well. He had his PhD, and eventually he was like, you know, a lot of these stories are coming up. I'm going to try and study them. And one big quote from him is that, like, it doesn't sadden me that people disagree with reincarnation. It saddens me that people don't read my work before deciding they disagree. So, like, for a lot of his life, he was discredited. And now I'm just going to say his name because I'm already getting into it. And his name is Ian Stevenson.
I mean, honestly, just go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about him and then I'll go.
And the reason why he was so impressive to me is because I'm kind of an auto-skeptic. Like, a lot of these, like, my cases are kind of specifically chosen because it was difficult for me to believe a lot of them. And if I'm going to go on the skeptic side, it's like, well, you know, what if it's this parent believes in reincarnation and something has come up where the kid has noticed that, like, mentioning certain topics gets certain looks from their parents, and then they have this narrative that they give their parents or whatever. You know, any of a variety of random things could come up where you could have like a false story come up, especially when it doesn't match up with anyone in real life and it just could be like the kid BSing or something. So I just feel like in general with these kinds of things, it's my tendency is to automatically be more doubtful, you know. But this is a really interesting thing to read for me because this guy really did come at it from the skeptic's angle. So Ian Stevenson, who died in 2007, was a psychiatrist by training and a prominent one. In 1957, when he was still at the tender age of 38, he'd been named chair of psychiatry at the University of Virginia. So again, this guy's big, he's 38, and he's chair of psychiatry at a university. However, his hobby horse in the paranormal began turning into a full-grown steed. I love that. I love that phrase. This is from a Scientific American article. That's not me coming up with that. We were just talking to about having hobbies. But yes, his hobby horse became a full-grown steed. As you can imagine, investigating apparitions in reincarnation is not something the college administrators were expecting of the head of their mental health program. But in 1968, Chester Carlson...
Wrongfully so, by the way. I'm sure many people go insane because ghosts are haunting them. So, poor souls.
Yes, but in 1968, Chester Carlson, the wealthy inventor of the Xerox copying process, who'd been introduced to Stevenson's interest in reincarnation by his spiritualist wife, dropped dead of a heart attack, leaving $1 million to UVA on the condition it be used to fund Stevenson's paranormal investigations. So this story is like surreal, inside of a movie. Stevenson like talks with random wealthy dude dies and says, here's $1 million just to investigate reincarnation. That is all I'm giving it to you for, dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that money enabled Stevenson to devote himself full-time to studying the minds of the dead. And over the next 4 decades, again, he dedicates pretty much the rest of his life's work to this. Stevenson's discoveries as a parapsychologist, and this means studying things that are outside the traditional realm of psychology, served to sway more than a few skeptics and to lead his blushing acolytes to compare him to the likes of Darwin and Galileo. And that's just a fun line, too, because it makes him seem really impressive. So then it lists a really impressive case from Sri Lanka that also matches up pretty well, and it's one of the first cases that Stevenson studied because he was surprised by it, and we can go into that case more when we're talking about cases. But in terms of what Stevenson did, he studied approximately 3,000 past life case reports, and he went into them in detail. He went to the people, he interviewed them. He then said, let's see if we can find this person that you're talking about. If there was a match, he would talk to both of them, and he would list out the statements that they made. So his first case in Sri Lanka, he had the girl make 30 specific statements that she believed were true about her past life, and 27 out of the 30 statements turned out to be true.
Wow.
Yeah, and these were specific things, like her cousin's name, Let's see, like where her dogs had been tied up in her backyard, something like that. So basically, he's doing really specific scientific work on this. And Stevenson is quoted, "We can strive toward objectivity by exposing as fully as possible all observations that tend to weaken our preferred interpretation of the data. If adversaries fire at us, let them use ammunition that we have given them." Meaning, skeptics are welcome here. Like, he really did try to lay out everything as openly as possible and be very critical of his own work, which is kind of necessary, especially when you're delving into something that feels as conspiracy-esque as reincarnation. And yeah, he did a lot of work on scars, having physical scars that matched with cause of death, which happened, I think, in 30% of cases. And yeah, and basically has a whole wealth of work that I found really impressive. So all of that to say, with whatever we were talking about originally, yeah, that there's a lot more evidence.
The logistics of reincarnation, right? I
mean,
this guy talks more about...
So he does get into logistics, you're right. He talked about how there tends to be a certain radius. That radius was like 100 to 200 miles from the person's actual birthplace, was where their past life tended to be, and how it wasn't immediate. There tended to be a few years between the previous person's death and this person's birth. I really went into so much background just for those logistics. But yes, that is, those are some of his findings about this. And logistically, the scar thing, which was really interesting. Yeah, and that there's zero evidence of karma. So if it were reincarnation, as according to Indian beliefs, there might be like, were you reincarnated as a worm or like something different, or was there some kind of moral judgment made of you that led to your rebirth? But Stevenson's interpretation was that this was a solely mechanical rebirthing process, not a moralistic one.
So it's like accidental, like...
Yeah, that's pretty much what he found, and that it was like usually within a certain like radius of the person's death, and within a few years, but not immediate. Yeah.
Accidental, but only to victims of usually violent deaths.
Yeah, that's the thing. So accidental, but well, the other possibility is that all people are reincarnated, but only some people remember because of the violence of the deaths.
I guess the intensity of the violence. You're also forgetting the third possibility, which is that the spaghetti god is real, and he's sending these people back for a reason. So, saying.
Can't disprove it, so...
I love that! Wow. Gandhi's proud of you. Now, listen, I want to talk to you about another case, because I think it's going to touch a little bit more on logistics too. Listen to this. So you have this kid, right? His name is Gus Taylor.
Okay.
Apparently, when this boy was 18 months old, he started to say that he was his own grandfather. And, there's a thing where, like, young children can sometimes be confused about their own identity, and they'll, like, confuse that with the identity of their family members. But the parents thought that this was pretty different, because his grandfather had actually died a year before Gus was born, and the boy totally believed that they were the same person, and there was a lot of things that he would do to show this. When shown family photographs, Gus identified Grandpa Aji when he was just 4 years old, and that was his grandpa's name. And I mean, okay, fine, let's say they talked about, they said, like, in the household, the name Grandpa Audrey came out, but the parents say that they had never shown him pictures. So for him to identify the grandpa as a young man in pictures was odd. Also, there was a family secret that nobody had ever spoken about in front of or around the kid, which was that Augie, the grandpa's sister, had been murdered and dumped in the San Francisco Bay. And so the family was very confused when the 4-year-old started to talk about his dead sister. According to the boy, God gave him a ticket after he died. And with this ticket, he was able to travel through a hole, after which he came back to life as Gus. Now, when I read that, I got goosebumps. What if, like, listen, you're a psychologist, dude. Love him. We stand. But what if he's totally whack about the actual process of who gets picked?
It could be
Um,
possible. I also remember reading a thing, and I don't have the source pulled up anymore, about suicides more often leading to reincarnations with between family members instead of between randos. Um, yeah, which is interesting to think about. Yeah, but
I love this so much because you really can go anywhere with the actual like behind the scenes process of it. You know, like
mm,
before like after someone dies, but before the reincarnation takes place, where is that soul and what is it doing and what is it being told? What the fuck?
well,
Like,
okay.
you know what I
Yes,
mean?
also because looked up this number, 108 billion people have been born ever, right? But there's only what, like 8 billion
Yes.
people alive right now? So
Mm-hmm.
are the other
Mm-hmm.
souls just on hiatus, like on standby? Are they just chilling? Like, is there a
This is the
queue?
thing.
Are
Like,
there other
then we get
worlds?
into
Like,
ghosts, and then we get into ghosts with that, right? Because it's like, okay, who's a ghost and who isn't? And I mean, I've always thought like, oh, one of two things, like either ghosts aren't actually what we think of as ghosts, but rather more like shadow people, like people that live in another dimension, and because of some kind of like glitch in the matrix, we can see them in our dimension for a second because they're actually in the same room but in a different dimension. Like in their same bedroom
oh, yeah,
but in
yeah,
a
yeah.
different dimension, and so we happen to see them for a second.
Mm, mm.
I don't know how I totally believe that because reasons, but that's one theory. The other one is, okay, no, ghosts are what we think of as ghosts, spooky and Victorian and shit. But not everyone is a ghost because you have a soul, and when you die, your soul goes to some place, and it's only people whose souls get stuck because of some reason, like unfinished business or a very traumatic death. Those people become ghosts and they stay. However, that conflicts with the whole reincarnation thing because it's like, okay, if it's not an accidental process and there is someone picking and choosing, wouldn't this picker not allow any victims of a violent death? Like, why would they allow any victims of a violent death to become a ghost? And why wouldn't this picker just take all of them and have them reincarnated? This way they can, finish any unfinished business instead of just having them wailing in limbo forever. Um,
I don't know though.
uh,
What if if it's not a. Here's the thing. If there's not a specific picker, what if there's just some kind of logic in terms of how it goes? Like this person had a violent death, and some kind of attachment to Earth for some reason, like someone they needed to watch over or something. So they become a
I
ghost. But
guess.
this person really, really wants a second chance or whatever. So they get reincarnation. There's
I'm.
all kinds of stuff
I
that could be
guess
going
you're
on there.
right.
Yeah, and well, the interesting thing with that too is that por qué no los dos, with this whole location theory in terms of usually the location being within a certain radius, what if those souls were ghosts at first and they just wandered around the area of their death, got a little bit off course, and ended up sucked into someone's baby when they were born?
Or since you talked about the fact that there's always a period of time before the person,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a reincarnation, what if all the people who experience violent deaths are ghosts, but you have to like get in line for a year or two before you can
Again,
actually be
yes,
put
is
on a
there a
body?
queue?
What if it's like a line at the ATM, like literally?
Dude, what if ghosts have to social distance because of corona?
I mean, I think that makes sense for some ghosts, but then you think of things like the Yurei or like the Kaidan, right? Like these Japanese water ghosts and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, like these ghosts are talked about as like haunting these places forever and ever and ever.
Mm.
And
Maybe they're
there's
just more
parallels to.
bitter bitches?
I
Maybe just by
guess,
the
I guess
tenacity of
that's
their personality, they
possible.
said, I don't even want a second chance at life. I just want to terrorize y'all from the sidelines, and that is my mission now.
And also, I love water and
Dude,
pools.
yeah, that is the level of petty that I, I'm not even going to say I aspire to it, I embody it.
Love that. Okay, well, I want to talk to you. I want to read you a story. Actually, that's what I want to do
Okay.
next. Never mind. I want to read you a story. Um,
Okay.
I read this story and I loved it, and I need to read it to you. It's not. I mean, it's just a story, so nothing factual. I don't know how information it actually is, but I just think, ugh, I love it. So, okay, The story is called Reincarnation is Real, and it is by username Imminent. I found it on this No Sleep subreddit, which, as you know, is all real stories. So here we go. Around 8 years ago, my daughter went missing. I remember the morning I lost her like it was yesterday. I woke up before my husband, only to find the front door ajar. Panic ran through my veins as I went to check my little girl's bedroom, but Sarah was gone. She was 4 years old. And that's on T. Just kidding, she didn't say that. The police searched for months. There was an Amber Alert for her. We put out hundreds of missing persons posters. There were thousands of tips called in, but none of them yielded anything of value. I just couldn't believe that was happening to us. How could the world be so cruel? I, of course, was destroyed. I couldn't sleep, and I barely ate. It got to a point where I was hardly functioning. If it wasn't for my husband, I don't think I would have gotten through it. He was my rock, and while I knew on the inside he was upset, he stayed strong for me. We couldn't both break down, and thankfully he never lost it. Not like I did. Not in front of me, at least. "We'll get through this," he would say. "Do you think she's still out there?" I asked. He paused before he answered. "I'm not sure." I don't know what hurt worse, the possibility that she was alive but forced to endure an awful situation, or the possibility that she was gone completely. My husband didn't like to talk about it. He shut me down every time I brought it up. We all grieve in our own way, I suppose. Somehow, the hardship brought us closer. While this kind of horror would tear most couples apart, it only made us stronger. It was the way he was there for me, the way he picked me up when I was down. I made the right choice in a partner, I thought, through it all. A few years later, I found out I was pregnant again. I was nervous, feeling as though I'd failed once before. My husband reassured me, of course. "This time will be different," he stated, as though it was a fact. I gave birth to another daughter. We named her Jennifer Sarah, after her sister. As she grew, I noticed there were odd similarities between the two. They looked so much alike. They even had similar birthmarks on their cheeks. When I'd pulled out a few of Sarah's old toys, it was like Jennifer recognized them. She even gave her dolls the same names that her sister had. They also liked the same foods, loved the same shows, and would even want me to read the same bedtime story. I felt like I was blessed with a second chance. Jennifer was closer to me than she was with her father. He didn't mind, of course. It gave him more time to focus on his work. He was present as a father, but he wasn't really fond of babysitting, as he would call it. Okay.
Yeah, excuse me.
To be honest, imagine the audacity of having a baby and then taking care of that baby babysitting. We can relate.
Dude,
I
I just drop the whole man, lose him. What?
To be honest, I think the similarities were too much for him. Maybe it was too painful. I didn't mind though. I know it's selfish, but I like the fact that she preferred to spend all of her time with me. Once her father had even offered to take her to the park, but she refused. She wanted me to go instead. Yesterday, something very alarming happened. I took Jennifer to the park. It had a large play structure which she enjoyed, and was surrounded by peaceful woods, which I enjoyed. I watched as she played the same way Sarah did when I used to take her there. She was headed down the slide when a buzz on my phone distracted me. I pulled it out and saw it was a notification for a new episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Just kidding. It was a text from my husband. He was wondering what we were going to do for dinner. I replied quickly, then returned my gaze to the play structure. To my horror, my child was nowhere to be seen. I swear I had only taken my eyes off of her for a second. I don't know why the writer wrote this like this, but "Not again," I whispered as I frantically began this. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Oh, snap. Not again.
Not again. Me when I lose my second child.
It's like that
not
meme,
again.
Here we go again.
Anyway, not again, I whispered as I frantically began to search for her. After running aimlessly through the woods while calling her name, I finally found Jennifer. She was underneath a tree and was digging for something. "Jennifer!" I shouted as I rushed to her. "Mommy?" she said as she turned. Her hands were covered in dirt, and she looked worried. "What were you thinking?" I asked as I grabbed her by the shoulders. "Do you know how much you scared me? You could have gotten hurt. Do you understand that? Never enough like that again." "I'm sorry," she frowned. I hugged her and sighed in relief. "What are you doing out here?" I questioned. She pointed to the hole she had started to dig. I raised my eyebrow curiously and walked over to the shallow pit. "Don't play in the dirt," I said. "I have to keep digging," she exclaimed. "I have to show you." "Show me what?" Mommy, just keep digging. You have to see, it's a deep hole. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to listen. We stopped by the house and grabbed our shovel. Do you want to stay here with Daddy? I began. I'll be right back. No, Mommy, please don't leave me. I have to be there, she pleaded. Okay, but you need to stay right next to me, I relented. No running off. You really scared me. I know. I'll stay close this time, I promise. The two of us headed back to the park. We walked to the woods and found the shallow hole Jen had dug. I began to shovel at it. I don't know how long it took me before I hit something. Maybe it was hours. Little Jennifer did as she was told. She stayed nearby, eating a sandwich and the snacks I'd packed her. I dusted off the hard surface I had struck, only to find something that was like an off-white color. I dusted away the dirt until I could make out what I was looking at. There in front of me was a child-sized skull. Beside it, I saw something shining in the light. I picked it up to reveal it was a butterfly earring, one from a set that I had bought Sarah a few days before she went missing. What the hell? I stammered. What the hell is this? It's me, Mommy. Jennifer started with a mouth full of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's where Daddy left me after he put me to sleep.
Ooh.
Scene.
Jeez.
Jeez Louise, not again.
Also, I like having stories related to our topic. Maybe we should start each episode with a story or something.
Girl, I got
it's
you.
Very
don't
gripping.
worry.
But yeah, I mean,
I don't have anything. I don't have anything to say either. It's just a really good story, and I just wanted to read it.
Yeah, just can you imagine?
And that's on. That's on marrying the wrong
Dude,
person.
that's
Are you
on
kidding me?
knowing
Hello?
once he calls it babysitting that man is wrong for you. Straight up. It's on holding high standards so that your child doesn't get killed, buried, and reincarnated. And that is the tea.
That is the tea. Oh my god, that moment when
that moment
I have
when
one
your
more
father,
case actually.
when your husband,
That moment when your
child,
father
so
puts you to sleep and then buries you,
one.
and then you're reincarnating your future sister, and then put your father in jail. Love
Hashtag just Jennifer Sarah things.
Very relatable. So I want to talk to you about one more person. This is another reincarnation case before we close out the episode
dang.
that I found super
Okay, because I have a few
interesting.
more cases too.
Oh, actually, don't worry. We'll have a longer episode.
Okay.
Excuse me, do you hear the audience complaining? I don't hear anything. I don't hear a peep. So, hear me out. You have this guy. His name is Peter Hume, and he was a bingo caller from Birmingham, England, that started having very specific dreams about life on guard duty at the Scottish border in 1646. Talk about specific,
Yeah.
Okay? He gives you this guy's giving you years. So he apparently was a foot soldier of Cromwell's army, and his name was John Raphael. Love that name. When put under hypnosis, Hume remembered more details and locations. He started to visit places he remembered with his brother, and even found a small item that appeared to have come from the era in which he had lived. Horse spurs. Okay. With the help of a village historian, in Comstock, South England, Peter apparently even managed to positively identify details about a church that he had known back in the 17th century, and he was able to tell this village historian that the church used to have a tower with a yew tree growing from it. This was not a published fact. This wasn't public information, so it really started this historian that Peter knew that the church tower had this tree growing on it, since the church tower had been taken down in 1676. In local registers, John Raphael was actually discovered to have been married in this church, the guy that he says he used to be. And a Civil War historian, Ronald Hutton, investigated the case and actually asked Peter very era-specific questions while under hypnosis. This guy, however, I should point out, was not satisfied that Peter was totally in tune with the era of his past life, as he couldn't answer all of his questions in a satisfactory way, but he said that about 80% of them he was, which I think that's good. Thoughts?
I mean, how do he know it?
That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. How did he know that? I mean, was he some like weird like local history, like local church history buff, and he just knew this and was trying to like own like the village historian, like the poor old lady. It was like, ha, pwned you, bitch. Like, I knew this, and I'm making you think I was reincarnated. Like, no. So
I mean,
yeah.
that would be the skeptic's argument, though. I'll see if I can play the devil's advocate at some point, but as you know, us white men love to do. Yes, I have to tell you that I'm using Sunny in the gender neutral way because I am a man.
I mean, we've done that, girl. We done been new. But what you got?
Okay, so it's interesting that you brought that one up because my next case is somewhat similar. Actually, pretty similar in terms of using history to verify. But mine is a guy named Arthur Flowerdew, which first of all is a sick name. Imagine having the last name Flowerdew. Imagine me being Sunny Flowerdew. Dude,
Sunny Flowerdew. Oh my god. Dude, if you didn't wear a crown every day of your life, like a flower crown every day of your life with that name, you're canceled. Okay? That's listen. If your parents gave you a name like that, they're telling you have to commit to this name and there's no other way around it.
Dude, they're telling you have to do
commit.
acid before the age of 15 with that kind of a name. There are no other options.
You are buying tickets to Coachella every year and going.
Absolutely. Like Vanessa Hudgens herself. Okay, so James Arthur Flowerdew was an Englishman from Norfolk, England, whose claimed recollections of the ancient city of Petra in Jordan are offered as proof of the existence of reincarnation. Yes, so from his adolescence, Flowerdew experienced strange visions of a stone city carved into a cliff, which were particularly strong when he played in the multicolored pebbles on a beach near his home. The clarity of his visions grew as he got older. One day, as an adult, he watched a BBC documentary, because he's a British man, and what British man doesn't watch BBC documentaries? Or, of course, Americans too, we support you if you like BBC.
David Attenborough, we stand.
We do stand. He watched a BBC documentary on the ancient city of Petra in Jordan, and immediately recognized it as the city of his visions. He became convinced that he had lived a previous life in Petra, and contacted the BBC. So check this out. I don't know what the BBC saw in him, but they filmed and broadcasted a documentary on Flowerdew, which the Jordanian government then saw and was intrigued by. So the Jordanian...
I mean, I'll tell you what the BBC saw in him. Ratings, honey.
You're right. So then the Jordanian government watches this BBC documentary, and they offer to fly Flowerdew out to Petra to examine its remains and perhaps offer insights on analyzing the city. So I love how they don't say, like, let's fly him out and see if he's legit, right? They're like, oh shit, this man's reincarnated? Let's have him fly in and analyze the city for us. Like, yo, let's get some real expertise in here.
I mean, we have enough proof. Get the plane, we're flying to Petra.
Dude, exactly. But some stuff's crazy. So before he left for Jordan, Flowerdew was interviewed by an archaeological expert excavating Petra to test his knowledge of the ancient city. Flowerdew described the city with astounding accuracy and pointed out 3 landmarks prominent in his memory. He went directly to these landmarks upon his arrival at Petra, including his purported place of murder, explained and this is an interesting one. They had a device whose explanation had baffled archaeologists. So they were like, we found this thing that they used, but we have no idea what it was used for. And Flowerdew immediately gives a very plausible use for the device, and even correctly identifies the locations of many landmarks that had yet to be excavated. So many experts said that Flowerdew had more knowledge of the city than many of the professionals studying it, and they did not believe him to be an incredible con man. So this is one of the funniest parts of this story too, is that basically a bunch of the people who interact with him confirm, like, we don't actually believe him intelligent enough to have faked all of this knowledge.
I'm sure he was both offended and relieved.
Yes. Because they felt it was a feat which would have taken extraordinary skill. The archaeological expert on Petra who accompanied Flowerdew to Jordan said, here's a quote, "He's filled in details, and a lot of it is very consistent with known archaeological and historical facts, and it would require a mind very different from his to be able to sustain a fabric of deception on the scale of his memories, at least those he's reported to me. I don't think he's a fraud. I don't think he has the capacity to be a fraud on this scale." Yeah, so I love it. We love confirming people by affirming their lack of intelligence. It's just so funny. Um, so yeah, and basically there were movies made about this. And Flowerdew himself maintains that he never saw or heard of Petra before the BBC documentary, and had never read any literature on the city. So it's a pretty wild case. And again, it's interesting too because with reincarnation, um, when it crosses like cultural historical lines, it's similar to your case that you just described. It's like there's a lot of gaps in knowledge there, you know. Again, it would take a really skilled con artist. Now, could it be that Arthur Flowerdew lived up to his name and was just a crazy little snowflake who desperately needed to prove himself and decided to do a lot of historical research on Petra because he had lost his mind and decided to go there and prove it to everyone? I mean, you know, can't discount it. But then there's so many cases similar to his that makes it pretty interesting.
Exactly. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, there are so many cases that even if one of them seems flaky or one of them is, like, debunked, same with aliens. Like, I straight up dislike people that are like, where's the evidence? Like, there's no physical evidence. I'm like, okay, first, like, the pieces of aircraft recovered from Roswell back in the 50s, that's physical evidence, honey. And two, like, okay, there's no more of that kind of evidence, but you have, like, tens upon tens of thousands of testimonials of people, like, basically recounting the same thing. And these people are, like, placed in these, like, interrogation-style rooms to tell their stories. And unless they're pulling some, like, long-game, elaborate prank that, by the way, yields them no reward, what incentive do these people have to all tell the same lie about their abduction stories and shit? And you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, there's no monetary gain, at least not for a lot of them, because a lot of these testimonials are kept anonymous.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and well, here's the thing. My family history is riddled with mental illness. This is a super fun topic to cover here, but no. So I've seen my fair number of crazies. I'm all up in it. I'm knee deep. I'm waist deep. I'm whole life deep. But so I feel like that's also where I come in with a lot of skepticism around conspiracy theories and stuff like that, because when you're losing your mind, you're just way more likely to believe anything that might be contrary to the mainstream narrative, because the mainstream narrative kind of isolates you. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so I think that, to be fair, probably explains a decent amount of conspiracy stuff that goes on. But yeah, I mean, the stuff's pretty interesting. And with the reincarnation thing, there's such a simple way to prove it, which is just saying, let's see if that person's real. And that person has been real, or that place that you're describing, or whatever. Which, you know, makes it pretty fascinating. I do have the Sri Lanka case too that convinced Ian Stevenson to devote his life's work. So
yeah, go ahead and cover that. But before I'll say, I mean, this is precisely why I believe in reincarnation. I'm still very confused about how exactly the logistics of something like this would work, but maybe we're not supposed to understand it. But as far as believing whether it happens, I do. Just look at all this stuff. I mean, just look at even one singular extraordinary case. Like, basically, honestly, any case of like a really little kid that knows all this shit that would be like way outside of his scope for that age, and for, you know, just the things that he's learning.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Totally. And so this is going in more on the scar thing. There's some physical evidence too. So in Stevenson's magnum opus, many of his subjects had unusual birthmarks and birth defects, such as finger deformities, underdeveloped ears, or being born without a lower leg. There were also scar-like, hypopigmented birthmarks and port wine stains, and some awfully strange-looking moles in areas where you almost never find moles. So he had 225 case reports of children who remembered previous lives and who had physical anomalies that matched those previous lives. Details that could, in some cases, be confirmed by the dead person's autopsy record and photos. So again, could match them to someone and say that. So some examples. A Turkish boy whose face was congenitally underdeveloped on the right side said he remembered the life of a man who died from a shotgun blast at point blank range. A Burmese girl born without her lower right leg had talked about the life of a girl run over by a train. So on the back of the head of a little boy in Thailand was a small, round, puckered birthmark, and at the front was a larger, irregular birthmark resembling the entry and exit wounds of a bullet. And Stevenson, and check this out. Stevenson had confirmed the details of the boy's statements about the life of a man who'd been shot in the head from behind with a rifle that seemed to fit. So he even has, like, the specific man who seems to fit this description. And then this physical match to his story, which, you know, if that's not something that at least produces a little bit of, like, maybe there's something supernatural going on here, literally what would make you question? It's just...
Agreed.
Yeah, it's just super wild and kind of inexplicable. And the the interesting thing is that I've realized while reading this too that every part of me doesn't want to believe in something supernatural, in any way. Like, it's just, even as I'm reading this stuff, it's like, well, maybe they could have made it up, or maybe there's this thing.
You're resisting, Sunny. You're resisting.
Of course I am, because who wouldn't resist? Because there's also, the fact is, there's a lot of, like, bullshit that goes on. You know, there's a lot of research that shows that GMOs, lower crop productivity. And
what are you talking about? Vampires are real.
And then, well, okay, there'll be research on GMOs, and some of it will say they lower crop productivity, and some of it will say they higher crop productivity, or whatever, you know, and, like, things that directly contradict each other. Then you find out, like, some research is just bogus. Like they're just claims being made all day, every day, all the time that are genuinely bogus, which is why I think it is good to go into these things skeptical, if anything. But it's made me realize, like, this guy, Ian Stevenson, is really approaching this from a pretty scientific viewpoint, and he still can't get scientists to read his papers or, like, even question him on it, you know? Like, it's a pretty deeply ingrained thing not to believe in this stuff, to the point where you're not even open to listening, which, you know, is science a belief system? That's another thing we could get into, but,
I mean... this is way too much. Let's not get into it. But
yeah.
Also, we don't want Francis Bacon to roll in his grave, so let's leave the guy alone for now.
It's true. I have a lot of faith in the scientific theory. But yeah. Oh, but I do have this Sri Lanka case.
Yeah, throw that at me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Sri Lanka, a toddler one day overheard her mother mentioning the name of an obscure town, Kataragama, that the girl had never been to. The girl informed the mother that she drowned there when her quote-unquote dumb, in parentheses, mentally challenged brother pushed her in the river, that she had a bald father named Harith who sold flowers in a market near the Buddhist stupa, that she lived in a house that had a glass window in the roof, a skylight, dogs in the backyard that were tied up and fed meat, that the house was next door to a big Hindu temple outside of which people smashed coconuts on the ground. Stevenson was able to confirm that there was indeed a flower vendor in Kataragama who ran a stall near the Buddhist stupa, whose 2-year-old daughter had drowned in the river while the girl played with her mentally challenged brother. The man lived in a house where the neighbors threw meat to the dogs tied up in their backyard, and it was adjacent to the main temple where devotees practiced a religious ritual of smashing coconuts on the ground. The little girl did get a few items wrong, however. For instance, the dead girl's dad wasn't bald, but her grandfather and uncle were. And his name wasn't Harith, that was the name, rather, of the dead girl's cousin. Otherwise, 27 of the 30 idiosyncratic, verifiable statements she made panned out. The two families never met, nor did they have any friends, co-workers, or other acquaintances in common. So, if you take it all at face value, the details couldn't have been acquired in any obvious way. So that's the story of the Sri Lankan girl that started Ian Stevenson's research. And I love that practice of just having her make a bunch of verifiable statements. And he states that in his research, he would only pursue cases where the children were willing to write down statements like that, where you could verify their truth or lack of. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty fascinating. Will I be reading this late into tonight instead of doing work that I have to do? Possibly. Very possibly.
Well, Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I definitely do like the much more scientific approach, specifically of this case. I think I think you very much like this too because it's I mean anything that kind of falls within that more scientific approach to a topic like this is going to be very appealing to you. You just explained to us why, so I get it. Yeah, so thank you. um, Everyone, if you enjoyed this episode of Scary Talk, please do let us know by DMing us at Talk Scary on Twitter and Instagram. Also, if you have any future topic ideas for future episodes, please do let us know by DMing us there as well, or on our Facebook page at Scary Talk. Remember that you can listen to us on any and all podcast listening platforms. That's Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Music, TuneIn, etc. Sunny, anything else?
No, just thanks for a great episode, Andre. You're the best, and thank you to our listeners. I can't see you or imagine you, but I bet you're super great.
No, that's sweet. Remember, don't die a violent death, or you might be reincarnated into me, and you will not like that. Yeah, that's that. I'm sure there's an alien in your shower or something like that. We love you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.